works. Okay, I think I've got audio now coming through. We'll have to wait and find out. Okay, so can you hear me now? Are we getting some kind of audio coming through at this point? Sweet, okay. So let me try that again. Unless you can read lips, you probably missed all of what I said earlier. I'm Mike Linden. I'm one of the technical artists working on the GameDev tools, along with Louise Krull and Paul and Bruce CSN. Louise is in the chat, so he can help out as well. What I was saying earlier, which kind of points to what we were just dealing with, is welcome to the first office hour. And today's going to be kind of figuring out the technical details. As you noticed there, I was trying to figure out, like, my mic is not working. So if there are technical issues today, I apologize. We'll figure it out as we go along. But more importantly, for you, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions, to share files if you want us to go through stuff. Basically, if you've got any questions around GameDev and Houdini or the GameDev tools, and you're looking for an answer, I am going to try and help you out. So to that point, I think the first thing I want to do is, if you do want to share a file, then the way we're going to do it for now is through Discord. I've set up a Discord server that is basically going to be live when we do these office hours, so that you have somewhere to kind of share files. I'd keep the chat to the stream chat so that it's all in one place there, but it's up to you. And the link for that, let me just find it quickly. I'm putting in now, so hopefully you can see that. So if you're not already signed up for that and you want to share a file, then feel free to drop it in there. Otherwise, like I said, you can just ask questions directly in chat, and we'll kind of deal with it that way. So that's kind of the idea. I think for today, what I'll do is I'll give you a little bit of an update as to kind of what we've been doing in the GameDev team over the last, say, 6 months or so. But if you want a really good deep dive into who we are, what we're about, the kind of tools that we make, I would suggest you go and check out Louise's presentation that he did quite recently at SIGGRAPH. If you go to sideeffects.com, you can find a link for it there. And he basically spends 40 minutes going into, in depth, more than I'm going to do now, some of the tools that we're currently working on, some of our future plans, some of the third-party integrations that we already have and that we're working on. One of them being Substance. I know a lot of people have been interested in that. So I would say check that out. If you're looking for more information. But what I'll do now is kind of just give you a very quick overview. This is meant to be interactive, so at any point, if you've got a question or a comment, drop it in the chat, and I will try and answer as we go along. Cool. So hey, let's have a look at this quickly. Let's see if this works. Sweet. So very, very quickly, these are just some of the things that we think kind of flew under the radar when 17.5 came out. PDG was a big one, but there were a bunch of other things. We now have PBR viewport shaders. So if you are looking for parity between Substance and Unreal and Houdini, there is now a shader that will allow you to do that. We now have GPU accelerated volumes in the viewport, which is super sweet. It's really fast. It works really well. You do need an NVIDIA card, and you do need to be on Windows, but I think for most of you that shouldn't be a problem. I'll talk a bit more about Houdini packages in a second. We now have MICT tangents as part of the polyframe node. So if you are trying to export those, you're good to go. And then there's a bunch of FBX improvements that Louise has actually done in the last 6 months or so. I'll cover some of them here, but like I said, have a look at his video on the website for more details, because he does a good job of kind of covering all of that. So this is kind of just a little thing, but I think it's worth mentioning if you are working in a production environment. As of 17.5, we actually now have this package management system. And the idea is that it's kind of meant to replace your Houdini.env. So if you have Redshift installed, game development tools, and a bunch of other things, the Houdini.env file kind of gets a little messy and can start stomping on various environment variables. So the way that we've decided to deal with that is now there is a package system, and essentially what that means is you can create these JSON files which will append, overwrite, reference these variables, and so you can kind of start layering them together. I think it'll be a much better way to work if you're in a production environment. And we'll actually be moving the GameDev tools and how they work just when you download them onto your system over to this probably in the next month or two, because we do think it's just an easier way if you are installing other plugins and stuff to deal with this. So just something to be aware of. FBX improvements, a lot of stuff here, and I'll just very quickly go over them if you're not already aware of them. Louise has done a bunch of work on handling skeletons better. A lot of this work is around the idea that we want to be able to round trip rigs. We want to get them in and out of UE4, in and out of Maya, and kind of keep a lot of that data flowing without you kind of breaking things. So one of the other things is the ability now to import and export the principal shader, including the Maya Stingray shaders. So that now kind of goes along for the ride with your FBX files. You can export custom material properties. We've had quite a few people say that, you know, in order for this to work in their pipeline, they have a lot of specific metadata that they carry along with their FBX files, and we needed to support that as well. Added build info to the FBX files. We ignore hidden objects. So if you are dealing with two different packages that have different ways of representing a hierarchy, that was often a problem, and we've kind of now dealt with that. The ability to export groups differently than locators. Once again, it's this issue of like how different packages deal with the hierarchy and what a group or a null or a bone is. You can export clips, and you can also export arbitrarily named UV channels. So this was something that had been done already in Houdini for a while, but the FBX plugin hadn't been updated. So now you can tag your UV attribute, whatever the name it is, with a texture tag, and then it'll pick that up and it'll work on the FBX side. So I think that's pretty cool. We've obviously been doing a lot of stuff. We had the GDC projects earlier this year. I'm not going to talk much about that. I'll talk a little bit about some of the new tools. I'm not going to do roadmap stuff, and I'm not going to go into this, but just so that you know, GameDev is probably going to shift over to being called Side Effects Labs, but still have a lot of the same thing. We'll have more information about that later in the year, so I'm not going to really go into it now. We'll skip that for now. So these are just some of the tools that we actually harvested from two projects we did in March for GDC. And you can get them directly from GameDev tools. Go and check them out. There's a lot of good stuff there. I'm not going to kind of go into more depth for that for now. This one I wanted to cover because I think it's kind of the future of where baking is going. If you haven't seen this, and hopefully this stream's okay for you, this is our new maps baker, and it's working in COPS and kind of in height fields, and you can basically bake a 2K map in like 8 seconds. What you're seeing here is real time. It's hopefully going to replace our Mantra baker. It's got a lot of the same features. We're trying to keep it at parity, but you should definitely check it out if you're not already using it, and give us feedback. We're always looking to hear more about that stuff as well. Let's see if we can go to the next thing here. There we go. Something else that I think is just worth repeating, we now have a building generator. And this is really cool because the idea is that you can actually bring your kit pieces, plug them into this tool, and then build a building from that. So instead of procedurally generating the geometry, we create a rule set that takes your existing pieces and then uses them to flesh something out. And what's really cool with this is you can actually get a lot of different variations. This is just some of the examples that someone was able to create, one of our interns using that tool. And we're also once again looking for some feedback. And if you do want to give this a try, there's some good news. We actually have some documentation for it. So Matt Estelle has actually been helping us out in this, and he's going to be basically populating all of the GameDev tools with help cards and all of his fancy GIFs, because we all love GIFs. He's got both documentation for this one and a tutorial on the side effects page if you want to go and check it out and kind of learn how to use it. But it's a minor thing, but we realize documentation is important. It means that you don't have to ask us questions. You can figure it out yourself and hopefully get moving faster in the right direction. So yeah, that was just a very quick overview. The reason I didn't go into more depth with this stuff, like I said, is because I think you should check out Louise's talk. That'll give you a lot more information kind of about what's going on and what those tools involve and that kind of thing. So yeah. So what I'm going to do now is we actually had some people post some stuff in Discord earlier in the week, stuff that they thought we might want to cover. I'm going to start, if those people are around, answering those questions just by talking about them. And if I need to, I'll jump into files. I have a feeling what you'll find me doing a lot is basically referencing something that's already there. I think one of the tricky parts sometimes is just finding all the information. And because we're in it all day, every day, we generally know where to go to get it. And so I don't mind being Jeeves for you today. You ask me the question, I point you to the file. Everyone's happy at that point. So we'll do that. Malcolm, how would you recommend approaching Houdini for someone who has never used the program before? I'd go to our website and I would check out the tutorial section. There is a ton of content there. So if you're looking to just get started, we've actually got an entire getting started section, which will start you from the basics of understanding the UI, how to think differently, because I think procedural workflows are a little bit different if you're coming from another 3D package. But that would be my starting point. Go and dive in there. There's a bunch of videos which will kind of get you up to speed. And then when you're at a good place, what I would recommend you do is actually get involved in the various communities, either on the forums. You can ask questions there and people will generally help you out. There is also Slack channels and Discord servers and various other things where you can go, and there's an entire army of people who are more than happy to help you answer questions, figure stuff out. You can share files. I think it's one of the coolest things about Houdini is when you're stuck, you can share a file and people can kind of look at your thinking by looking at your nodes and then share back how you can deal with that. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Okay, so I'm going to jump into some of those questions that came up during the week. So someone was asking about the physics painter. I forget who it was now, but I think they were asking to basically like see how the physics painter works and a demo of it. And so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to point you to something that already exists. So let me see if I can find this. If you go to the SideFX website, to the tutorial section, you can actually find a tutorial on the physics painter. So Paul did this a while ago now, and that kind of goes into detail about how the tool works, what it does, how you might want to use it. So that's one point of reference that I would give you. The other one is part of the GameDev tools, we actually have example files. So when you download the GameDev tool set, and I was actually going to ask Louise this offline beforehand, so he might need to confirm with me. But we actually have an entire folder of example files, and I think that also gets downloaded and you should have access to it. But there is an example file in there for the physics painter. So I'm going to load that up now so we can have a look at it. So this is also another way to learn from that. If you are trying to find that, you can actually find that on our GitHub page, which I'm going to go to now. So this is the path. Hopefully you can see that. And in there's actually a HIP section, and inside the HIP section is a whole bunch of example files. So if you are like, how does this tool work? I would use this. There's generally a tutorial on the website, and then there's also now documentation. Slowly but surely that stuff is coming up. And I think I was going to bring this up as well. So I know I'm probably covering stuff a lot of you already know, but forgive me, I just want to make sure that it's out there. We do have an overview page. So if you go to the website, once again, Industries, Game Development, There's a number of ways to do this, but this is one of the ways. Right down at the bottom, you'll find that there's a More Tools button. And this needs some updating, but for now it's not a bad place to go. You can actually find a full list of the GameDev tools if they have a tutorial link and that kind of thing. So yeah, whoever asked about the Physics Painter stuff, check that out. I would say that would be the place to go. Let's see, what else we got here? Someone was asking about the RBD workflow, but didn't really go into more detail about what you wanted to know about the RBD workflow. So if you're online and you're watching and you want to flesh that out, just drop it in the chat and I'll see what I can do about that. Similarly, the decal projector, we do have videos for those. So once again, you can check those out. I guess what I'm trying to say here as well is what I'd like to do in this time that we have is, if it's not covered in those videos or there's something extra that you're trying to figure out, let's use this time to add to it rather than rehash what's already there. Like I said, I can always point you where you need to go, but I think that might be a better use of everyone's time. Pete had an interesting question. He wanted some examples of setting up and managing UV's texel density against procedural geo. And I think that was specifically with the new Substance plugin integration that's coming out. I'm curious also to know, Pete, like what is it that you're looking for on that end? If you want to kind of give me some more information, that would be really helpful. And then Maria asked about vertex animation textures and the lightweight render pipeline. So this is already available. I don't know if maybe we didn't do a very good job of kind of announcing this at GDC, but for our GDC project, one of the projects we did in Unity, I ported over all of the vertex animation texture shaders to the lightweight render pipeline. And you can find that once again actually all at the GitHub link, and I think there's a page on the side effects forum which has a direct link to a package, and then you can grab it. But yeah, if you want to start testing out the vertex animation texture stuff with the Unity's lightweight render pipeline, on the GitHub page there's a Unity section. In there's your shaders. And yeah, there were some changes to 2018 and 2019 in terms of how the shaders functions are used. So there's actually two sets of packages. So depending on what version of Unity you're running, you either want to grab this one or this one, and that should get you started. So Maria, if that's the kind of information you were looking for, I hope that helps. So something that we've kind of touched on, but I haven't really spoken too much about. We are working on a new vertex animation textures node, which is kind of it's a version 2 of what we've got, which should make things easier to do. We've added a bunch of features. We'll see how time goes today. I might show you like a sneak peek of that. It's not quite ready to release. I would say it's going to be maybe another month or so before it's out in the wild. But it is quite a different interface, and so we'll also be releasing documentation, tutorials, all the usual stuff for that if you want to check that out. Just want to make sure I'm keeping track of stuff here. Now that the COPS substance connection is coming, will the instabilities around getting COPS data into SOPs be resolved? That is a good question, Sandra. I can't answer that for you, but we know that there could be some work done on the COPS side to make it more stable, and I'm sure R&D is aware of that, and we'll have a look at that. Unfortunately, I can't give you any more info around that at the moment. I know Louise has kind of been working on the Substance plugin, and he's probably got a bunch of information about that, but yeah, I think we should be good for a while. Or at least he's making sure that that's pretty good. So textile density tool would be a great addition to the games tools. Validating if texture space is wasted or underused based on applied texture size. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. So if you're not aware, this is kind of how we work with the game dev tools. We listen to you. We try and figure out the kind of problems you're running into, and if we think it's a generalized issue, then we kind of make a tool and then release that. So you're right. I've seen a couple of people who have made textile density like checks so that when a modeler is doing the UVs for their mesh before they export it, it'll check the overall kind of textile density and how it matches with the metrics of the game. It's not a bad idea. And I think it'd be pretty easy for us to do in Houdini. So we'll add it to the list and see what we can do about that. Okay, so Peter, I'm going to let you keep bringing in those comments and questions while I just go through a couple of other things. Yeah, Eric East, you were asking about a deeper dive into the procedural texturing and shader building side of things, as well as more of the UV side of procedural modeling. That's kind of broad. Once again, if you want to kind of give me something a little bit more specific that you want to talk about, we can do that. There's a couple of things I want to point you to here. One is check out Louise's video from SIGGRAPH. He talks more about the substance integration. I think that's probably where we're going, and I would suggest you kind of hold off and wait till that happens. If you don't want to do that, I actually did a webinar last year on COPS and procedural stuff. So let me see if I can find it. Let's see. I know that we sometimes have stuff in different places. But yeah, I actually did a kind of a webinar on, it's not there, learn, let's see. I showed a technique which Jeff Late was kind enough to share with me, where you actually write the UV data into a height field, and you bring the height field into COPS, and then you can do all sorts of COPS compositing stuff, and then you can send that back out to basically, let's hope this doesn't play. Yeah. So yeah, have a look at this. If you go to Learn Talks and Webinars and just do a search for COP, there's COPS for games. And I kind of go into procedural texturing there, where you can take the UVs from a model, convert them into a height field, or convert them into height field data, and take that across into COPS, do whatever you want, and then you output the COP values or results to a shader and then view it in the viewport. So you kind of have this cycle going. You can do it that way, but like I said, I would recommend kind of holding off on the substance plugin, which I think Louise was saying it should be available pretty soon, maybe in the next couple of months. So you can give that a try. So Peter, let's just see what you have to say. So you've built a procedural column and you're trying to apply a texture at a given scale. As the column grows, the UVs would need to be cut and are aligned appropriately. I'm thinking of a baked texture scenario and not a UE4 world aligned material. Does that make better sense? I think so. So what you're saying is like you say, you have a column and you want that as a procedural asset that you can basically make shorter or taller. But you want the UVs to correctly map to that space. I feel like Louise actually either covered this in a talk at some point, or maybe had a demo file somewhere. I'll see if he's got anything to add to that. But if we do have that file, it might be a way to do it. I just want to read through and see what built a procedural column. At a given scale, the column grows, UVs would need to be cut and are aligned appropriately. Yeah, so this is where things get scary for me, because as you know, when you're like live demoing, stuff can break. It's kind of how it goes. But let's say we have our column, and we'll give it some caps, and we want to scale it. So there's obviously as usual, there's like a number of different ways I could do this. So let's say that this is I'm just gonna do this. And let's say that this is our scale factor. Yeah, so we can kind of move this up and down. So the idea is that I guess what we want is we want to kind of have a not a procedural texture. My brain is not working right now. A wrapping texture, a repeating texture that kind of keeps filling up that space. I think that's kind of the idea. So if we do a quick material on this, and just so we have something to, why is that not working? Let's see if this gives me what I want. I've been having some fun issues lately with my build. And let's give this a couple more height, rows. Yeah. So let's just do that for the sake of doing that. Okay, so obviously there's currently no UVs on this. I'm just going to switch over to my preferred desktop. But yeah, at this point there is nothing. And essentially, I guess what we want to do is, let's say that we want the UVs to always be a certain distance. Then you mentioned you don't want to do it like in UE4 with world space, but that's kind of the same idea. I would think that you would essentially say, lay out the UVs for this area based on a world space unit, world space distance, and then just have it repeat over and over and over again. Sorry, there's a bunch of chat messages that came through, and I'm just trying to keep up with them all. Oh, cool, Eric. I'm glad the cop stuff and Louise's video helped out. Yeah, there are still some issues with the slow preview and some baking issues. I think that's kind of what someone else was mentioning, is that the refresh of cops into the viewport is a little janky sometimes. We've run into that as well, and we've flagged it. We need someone to kind of take some time to have a look at it. Peter, I will continue with this example in a second. Is there a centralized public repo for existing demo files, like things shown at GDC and talks, apart from specific tutorial hips in the game development tools examples, of course? Not really. So we've basically done 3 demos. We did one last year, which was Brimstone. It was a kind of just a quick racing demo, vertical slice, and the plan was to release those files, but I think what we realized is we ended up using a lot of assets which we didn't have the license to, and so we couldn't release them, unfortunately. So we harvested the tools from that, we released those, but yeah, unfortunately the actual files we couldn't release. Similarly, the Quixel demo, if you've seen that, the Rebirth demo, which is amazing, that's all Quixel's stuff. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily have the license to that. They might be releasing those files at some point, but it's not on us, unfortunately. The one thing that I think we might be able to release is the Unity demo stuff. I know that there was talk about that actually just this week. But no, we don't have a central repository, just because there haven't been enough to kind of make that happen yet. Hopefully, as we kind of do more demos, we put this stuff together, then we can put them up there. If there's something specific you're looking for, so I know that one of the things that came up a lot after the Rebirth demo is the sci-fi panels. If you're looking for that, I think we might have a simple demo scene which kind of helps out with that. But maybe that gets back to your point of that's just game dev tool stuff. Okay, so I will get to some of those things in a second. I just want to kind of very quickly do this. So I'm going to just jump straight into a wrangle, unfortunately, but maybe this is not the best way to do it. All I'm trying to do is just kind of deal with UVY. And so I guess what I want to do is that, but I want to mod mod it. I don't know. Let's see what this does. Let's do this on vertices. How tall is this guy? Size 2.6. So we should be getting values all the way. Oh, well, that's not going to help now, is it? There we go. Okay, so that would kind of just stretch everything out really tall. But then if we have a look at this again, I need to do UVX as well. So trying to think what the easiest way to do this is. This is how we kind of just start and build and see what happens as we go. I might actually just build it this way so that I can get the open arc. So what I'm trying to do is I figure if I start with a curve, then it's easier for me to get the curve U. So I want to kind of get the distance around. I feel like I might be using the wrong node now. It's the new measure as well. This should be fun. Let's see. No, that's not going to work. I could use some crazy cos tan stuff, but I'm probably not going to remember it off by heart. So this is one of the things we're working on about these office hours, is how much prep do we need to do in order to actually be useful to you. Because this is now, I kind of just want to unwrap this. Well, I guess let me do some basic UVs first, and then I can just modify the ones that I need to. Let's do it that way. Cylindrical. There we go. That's better. We'll do that as vertices, fixed boundary seams. I'm just keeping this simple. You can ignore that part. The thing that I'm more interested in is, there we go. Okay. So I mean, the way that I've currently got it is I'm literally just taking world space position in Y and then using that for UV.Y, which obviously is going to get me outside of a UV unit space. But I think what it means is, like, if I modify this, you can see how even as I change the object, it's actually not changing the UVs on that object. So that's kind of the same idea as what you would do in Unreal. So I would kind of stick it to that. The only thing that you might want to then do, I guess, is you might actually want this looping back. So you might actually want to, let's see, is it mod 1? This might work. Probably not, but we'll give it a go. Yeah, so that might cause some problems if I don't have enough resolution to deal with that. Essentially what I've just done is I've said divide the point, the y value by 1, and if there's a remainder, then just give me the remainder. So that's how I kind of keep it in the 0 to 1 space. So now I've actually got a bunch of overlapping UVs. And I think if I did a bit more work on that, I could make that work so it kind of fits within that. Just to kind of show you that if I was to increase the rows and kind of get rid of that artifact slightly, but then we end up with something kind of like that, and then you kind of build it up from there. So I'm not going to like flesh this out completely, but I think that's kind of what you want to do, Peter. I hope that helps. Otherwise, I think, like you said, you can put something up on the forums and kind of do it that way. Let's see. Why does the collision geo group create another mesh in UE4 instead of being the collision of the mesh? I had to use a collision geo simple instead. Why does the collision geo group create another mesh? Mohammed, I think it might just come down to your naming convention. I know that we had this here somewhere. So I think what you're describing is generally like if you have an object, let's say like a rubber toy, then what you might want is to also output the like a collision mesh for that. So we might do something like this, and I'll just do an object merge to bring that in. So copy, paste, and then I'll just use a tetrahedralize to just get a very quick convex hull. Go. Okay, so you might get something like that. So as far as I remember, and I always have to check the docs for this, but it comes down to your naming convention for this. So as long as you've got your naming right. By the way, are you talking about doing it through FBX exporting, or are you talking about doing it through Houdini Engine? Because the two are different. With Houdini Engine, you give it a specific attribute, and for UE4, and it will then create it will know that that is collision geo. But if you're doing an FBX export, if I remember correctly, you've got to name it like UCX underscore collision, and then it needs to have the same root name as your other object. So without me loading up Unreal as well, that's kind of what you're looking for. So have a look in the documentation for that naming convention if you've already done that. And okay, so you're doing it through an HDA. Yeah, then definitely check out. Let's see if we can find it. Documentation. I'm wondering now if that's a. No, it shouldn't be an issue. It definitely should be possible. But let's see, Unreal plugin, collisions. So are you saying that you tried convex or complex collisions and that didn't work, so you ended up having to use simple? Because if that's the case, then it might be a bug. It might be something we need to look at. Just so you know what I'm looking at. We do, if you have a look in the Houdini Engine for Unreal documentation, there's a collision section, and you can use that to basically, using a group and giving it the name, it should be able to work. So if that's not working and you're still running into problems, why don't you send us a file to supported side effects and we can have a look at that, because that should be working. There's nothing, as long as you followed what's going on here, there's no reason that shouldn't work. So Louise is just saying I need to do, so we're just jumping around here for a second, do a UV transform with an expression based on the input size. So if I understand you correctly, Louise, what you're saying is like basically start with like this UV. Let's just fix this quickly. Nope, that was a bad idea. Transformation, that can work. Yep. And then I think Louise is saying if I put a channel expression based on the input size, so would that be over here, like bbox input dy size, which gives us 3.4, which gives us that. I don't know if that's kind of what you're talking about, Louise. Let's have a look. I feel like this is going to get us back to what we were doing before. Yeah, so I think this is kind of the same thing, but maybe I would need to add more to this in order to get this to kind of work. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah. So something I was trying to do earlier. Yeah, I'll leave it for now. Let's just have a look through some of the stuff. If you transform, link the height of the tube to unwraps, then it kind of works. Yeah, so I think that's kind of where we're all heading is using this as a method. Yeah, Mohammed. So send that file through if you're not coming right, and we can see what we can do to kind of have a look at that. Oh, scale down XZ. So what I want to do this 1 divided. I'm probably going to mess this up, but let's Let's just play it and see what happens. Nope. Because yeah, we want to, I guess the point is we want to kind of keep that like ratio going, right? Even though I think we're kind of there. Sorry, I'm not talking to myself necessarily. Louise and Paul are trying to help me out as well in chat, so that's where I'm getting this information from. Yeah, I mean, right here you can see that part of the issue with this setup is I want to scale the UVs. So I think just to kind of keep it simple, we'll put this back to 1 and 1, but then yeah, we can kind of do something like that to kind of keep it right. We'll ignore that. It's probably because I've got, yeah, stuff kind of sticking out there. So yeah, I think just going back to this whole issue, the two things that I would take from this is using your point wrangles to kind of just directly modify the UVY or UVX. I do that quite a lot. And then the other one is even just using a UV transform and just putting an expression in there. In this case, basically what I'm saying is, well, that's not right, is take the input bounding box size and then specifically in Y, and then that's what kind of transforms and keeps it the same. So no matter how big or small I make this thing, you can see that the UVs kind of always match up. So yeah, very similar to how you would do world space UE4 stuff. Cool. Sorry, I'm ignoring. Yeah, let's just make sure I'm not missing any messages here. I think I'm kind of keeping up to date. So I think I've kind of. Oh, wait a minute. I was going to say I've answered most of the stuff that you've put in. If that is the case, I'm going to kind of jump in the last 15 minutes into an idea that I had that I thought was worth sharing. So Eric, regarding the procedural shader texturing part, was mostly looking for a good way, for example, get good triplanar and matte shader noise preview in the viewport that I could then bake into mask with a maps baker. I only got it working with the Mantra render, which for my computer was a little slow, especially when trying to add displacement and bake that on top. Looking for a good way, get good triplanar and matte shader noise preview. Do we have, I'm trying to think if we have like a SOPS implementation of a triplanar projection. Clicking all over the place here. Let's try that again. No, we don't. I guess, is it only in the matte context? I guess, which is why you'd... Yeah, so I don't know if this is what you were using to do the triplanar projection stuff, Eric. In which case, because it's in the material context, I would think you would need to do it with Mantra or with baked texture. That being said, I mean, a triplanar projection, as you know, is basically you're just doing 3 projections and then taking the normal direction as your lerp, so you can kind of get between the 3. So you could probably recreate something like that at a SOP based level. Do it over here, and then you could use that with the maps baker if that's kind of what you're looking for. I think that might be a way to kind of approach that. Let's see. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would have a look at kind of doing it that way. But that's actually it's. I think that's so. Just going back a second, the maps baker, like I said, is something we want to be doing more of, or we want to use that more because it's a lot faster. But I think what we now need to do is start supporting what are the other things that would need to go along with that. So Paul's actually done an amazing job of adding a lot of the stuff that was in the bake texture node. So all the stuff that was on here, he's basically gone in and like pulled apart the guts and gone, oh, this is interesting, and added it to the maps baker. So the idea is that you can cover a lot of the same stuff, whether it's occlusion or edge detection, I seem to remember. There's a couple of different things. So that's kind of step one. But then I think this is the kind of feedback that we're looking into, which is what are the other things that you would need to support the SOPs-based maps-baker workflow in order to really make that sing. And it sounds like triplanar projections might be something that we should add. Luis, do you know if we have anything like that? I feel like the decal projector probably has some code or logic in it that we could reuse, but I could be wrong. So that's something to possibly look at. Yeah. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do for the last 12 minutes or so is just something that kind of had been gnawing at me for a while, and I thought I would kind of start it here just so you can kind of see the logic behind it. So if you haven't had a chance to watch a bunch of the SIGGRAPH talks, I would suggest you go and check them out. There's there's one from SIGGRAPH that I thought was pretty damn awesome, which is the one by Matt Battaglia at NetherRealm on Mortal Kombat. There's a ton of good stuff in there about effects workflows specifically, and we realized we didn't have that much. And one of the things that he showed, which was really cool, was how to do web maps. So they were running a fluid simulation. Go watch the video if you want more details. And then creating a wet map to kind of make the rocks wet as the fluid sim kind of fell on it. What was interesting about that is I think the way they did it is they wrote out a frame sequence and then saw that as a UV texture to bring it into the engine. And it meant that you kind of, it's just a wet map, so you're not too worried about resolution. But I was like, I think there's an idea here where we could combine this with something else, because Valentine Kozin at Rare gave this talk at GDC on the vomit they did for Sea of Thieves. And what was really cool with that was he kind of did this threshold map where he would just store like white and black for the mask of a frame. And then he would combine all of those so that you get something like this. And then the point is that you can use a smooth or a threshold to choose what grayscale value you want. So what he's essentially doing here is he's storing an animation sequence in a single frame by using different grayscale values. And maybe you've dealt with that kind of stuff before, but I was like, that's pretty cool. That's definitely something we should also be looking into. And I was like, maybe that's something that the NetherRealm guys could have done as well. So that's what I'm going to kind of do for the last 10 minutes of this, is try and kind of just do a very quick overview of what that might look like. So let's see. Yeah. So just going back to the maps baker, Paul was just saying that it can output a world normal map, and you can use the RGB components to mix textures. Okay, so that's kind of the idea behind the triplanar stuff, I guess. Yeah, he's answered that in the chat as well. So let's see if we can find this file. What did I do with it? Okay. So now I might not do it with the fluid sim just because the running of the fluid sim and the meshing of it will eat up more of my time than I have, but I'll quickly show like that as a starting point, and then I'll use a simpler example to kind of build it out. So the idea here is that basically, that's interesting. Let's go over there. Let's say that you have something like this where you have a splat that hits the ground and you want to save this as an animated decal that you can put on stuff all over the place. Then what we want to do is we want to store where those points are on a plane as like a mask, and then build that up so that frame 1 is a certain grayscale value, frame 2 is a different one, so on and so forth, and kind of do it that way. So like I said, this is going to take a little too long if we do it with fluids. So that's the basic idea. Instead, what I'm going to do is let's do it with grids, and I'll just make that like 2 by 2, and let's make that 128 points just to make it a bit easier. And And what I'm going to do is I'm kind of just move a sphere around over the surface. So that's a little big. Let's drop that down, do that. So we get something like that. And then I want to do transform. This is just me kind of doing a quick setup. That's not going to work. There we go. Times 5. Let's do 20. Let's just speed this up a bit. Oh, okay, too much. Yeah, I probably don't want to make that one bigger. Yeah, I want to make this one bigger. So let's do something like that. And we'll get there eventually. Okay, so let's give it 128 frames, a little bit more space to play with. So I want that, and then I want same thing here, because, and let's see now if we get this, yep, and we'll just make this a little smaller. Yeah. Okay. So the idea here is that imagine like this is hitting this object, and what I want to store is its position in each frame in the grid as a value. So the way that I'm going to do this is, let's do an attribute transfer. Oh no, let's do a group. I'm going to do a group. This is just one of the many ways that I could do this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to group points based on bounding box. So let's do that one there. So that should, am I getting this the right way around? No, I'm not. So let's switch that around. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I'm just kind of storing those points. And then what I want to do is I want to color those points. And to begin with, we'll just color them white, and we'll use group 1. And I guess what I need to do first is just make this black. I think we'll do this as point. Okay, and this, there we go. So yeah, so essentially what I've got is I've got something like this. So this is kind of similar to what Valentine was doing, and I think, you know, kind of what Matt was doing as well. So now what I can do is I can use a SOP solver. So maybe you've already kind of figured out where I was going with this, but I can take the current value, store it, and then kind of keep adding to it. So the idea here is like this is our previous frame, and for this example, I'm going to do 128 frames. So I'm going to divide our color 0 to 1 by 128. So it'll give us like 0.0 something, 0015 for this. And then we're going to accumulate that as we kind of go over the surface. So the quickest way for me to do that is here. I can just do divided by 128. Divided by 128, and that's going to be like super soft, but I don't know if you can see it on your screen. It might be a bit difficult to do that, but now what I want to do is I want to store that color on every frame, so that as we start going forward, we get something new. So this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Okay, so this is the current frame, this is the previous frame. And all I want to do is I want to just add the two together. So I'm just going to take the current color plus the previous color and add them together. So at CD equals plus equals, and maybe you know about this already, but you can do, I always get the naming of this incorrect. Let's see, input. I guarantee I'm going to have to like go and find this in the documentation, because I never exactly remember what it is. Let's see if that works. Nope. Reset simulation. So what's going on? We're bringing in the input. Let's make sure that this is working. So As an example, I will just set the color to red so I can test it out. And then, oh, that probably doesn't help, does it? Okay, so I think that's now working. Let's hide that, go back here, jump up a level. Hey, okay. So essentially what I'm doing here is, let's put a constant shader on that so you can see it a little bit clearer. Constant. Yeah, there we go. Get rid of, I feel like I'm seeing something I shouldn't be seeing. There we go. Okay. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm like I said, I'm storing these values in kind of increments. And so if we were to like finish this, basically this would be the output that we would have. We would have something that looks like this. I'm doing it wrong, aren't I? I need to take, do I need to override the value? Let's have a look. Because the first frame would be whatever. Let's just have a quick look here. 0.007. The next one would be one value up. So I might actually need to like increment that based on the frame and add that to it. Because I think otherwise I'm going to get something that's just going to basically be the same. So let's try at CD equals times equals frame. See, that's what's coming through. I wonder why that's freaking out. Like that seems like it's getting really bright really quickly. Interesting. I wonder what's going on there. Maybe it's the fact that it's, let's see. Okay, so that kind of looks better, but these values are clearly blowing out. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, those are getting very large. So previous frame, current frame. So we're taking color, which is that. And I would think that what that should be doing, let's see, int f equals frame. So 76, and if we were to times 76 by these values here, we should be getting that. So what I should be getting by like the last frame is a value of 1. Oh, it's because I'm adding it to it. Sorry, this is how I'm kind of working through it. Well, I'm going to let that kind of keep going, because what I'm going to do then is I can always normalize this. So let's just kind of let that play through. Let's just check our biggest values here. 17. It's kind of a hack, but I just want to kind of get something that's kind of working. Let's see. Divided by 17. There we go. Sandra, if it'll only work if the current frame covers the area of all the previous frames, right? Maybe it needs to be inside it in order for it to work. That's a good point. So I think what I want to try and do here is do a threshold, and let's see if I can do it here. So if we take whatever the value is, so we'll take CD and we'll do a smooth. I'm going to have to check my documentation, because I'm never always 100% sure about what the different Vex stuff does. But let's have a quick look. what we're looking for here is smooth. I don't know about you, but I always get confused when I'm going between like Houdini and Unity and Unreal or whatever. They're, you know, lerp and mix, and they're all slightly different, and it hurts my brain. So I have to double check to see what I'm looking for here. Computer number between 0 and 1. If the amount pass is less, yeah. So I think this is what I want. And what I want to do essentially is control these values here, and then this is the input. So I'm going to say value 1. And then I'm going to wrap up because I did say we would finish after an hour. So, and we'll do that, plug those in there. So let's see. Okay. I think we're onto something here. Let's see. Put that there. Yeah, so if I drive these two values now, then essentially what I can do is like animate this coming in. And I've probably got this wrong in some way because it's reversing it as well. Maybe 1 minus. Nope, that's not going to work. I'm just trying random stuff. But yeah, this is kind of the gist of the idea. So this is something that I think I'll flesh out a little bit more because Valentine covers it in his talk, and I know a couple of people have asked about it. And then, like I said, like I thought what Matt did for Mortal Kombat was awesome. And I was like, maybe we can do that in a single texture instead of writing out a mask for every single frame. And this way you can kind of store it all in one go. Before I finish up, let me just see. So Justin, you're suggesting $F divided by 128. I think, are you saying over here that's something that I should possibly do? I think the problem with that is it's kind of going to give me the same value. Like, I mean, we can try it out. I have no problems with that. Let's see. Reset simulation. Yeah, maybe. Could possibly work. And then also the possibility of doing CD is greater than 0. I'm not too sure how that would work. I'd have to have a look at that. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, the whole point of this was just a very quick, hopefully this gives you an idea of what I'm trying to do, which is I'm storing each frame as a certain grayscale value. I'm integrating or I'm adding that as we go all the way around. And then once I've done that, I can use a threshold. And so this is actually what I'm showing you here in this last node. This is the thing you would do in the shader in the engine, is you would basically choose your range. Why is this not working? What did we break? That's there. Yeah, so before I get distracted, I don't know what I did there. I'm gonna have to fix it. And if I want, I'll come back to this afterwards. Okay, so if you're still around, thank you for tuning in. So some people are asking, like, how often are we thinking of doing these? I think we're probably going to look at like every 2 weeks. We'll rotate out, myself and Louise and Paul. If you have any questions about the GameDev tools and you want to join us, feel free to add them either in the comments of the channel. There is also a Discord server, which, like I say, is right now literally just for like a live dropping in of files, if that's something that you want to do. And just so you have that link again, I'm putting it in the chat now. So there is there's a bunch of Discord servers where you can go and meet a bunch of really cool Houdini people. So I would do some searches for that if you want to do that. But like I say, this one is really just for sharing files and that kind of stuff. So on that note, thanks, and we'll see you soon. And now I have to figure out how to stop this. Bye.